So, very welcome and good morning. My name is Peter Salin, and I will be your host on this 1-hour webinar on the under the heading ENOVIA PLM for Medical Device Development. So, short background on my role at Technia. I'm responsible for new business and new solutions in life sciences, which means that I work with existing clients and new organizations introducing PLM, Product Lifecycle Management, in life sciences. Technia as a company and organization has a Nordic foundation. We're based in the Nordics, headquarters in Sweden, and but we do have a global presence. To introduce the topic, so introducing PLM in life sciences is typically always about combining your product definition, which might, as in this picture here, be represented by a bill of material, and at any point in time, we would like to know the agreed status of that product, and we want to connect it with a compliance status. Are we licensed to cure or develop our medical devices or pharmaceutical products? And that's reflected on the right-hand side. So where a green icon would reflect an acceptable compliance status, yellow would be uncertain, and red would be non-compliant. So this is the essence of what we're doing, implementing solutions and processes in life science companies, where we want to understand the compliance status of a product, and of course to release and develop medical devices and pharmaceuticals faster and faster. So we've been active in life sciences for the last 18 years or so. Technia as a company is 20 years this year in the summer. Some of the organizations we work with, as you can see, it's Mölnlycke Healthcare, GE Healthcare in Uppsala, Orion, so the pharmaceutical company based in Helsinki in Finland, Elekta, based here in Stockholm, but of course with a global presence. So these are some of the companies we work more actively together with. Technia is also a value-added reseller, so we're selling software, and we're a value-added reseller for our partner Dassault Systems. Dassault Systems is the #2 software company in Europe, and developing software for product development and product approval. They have a wide suite of software solutions comprising MCAD systems for design, say CATIA and SolidWorks. They develop finite element solvers with the Simulia suite. They own and develop tool or systems for lab notebooks known as Acceleris, recently renamed into Biovia. So we work close together with Dassault Systems on a suite called License to Cure, which is based on ENOVIA, and a product formerly known as Matrix 1. And that's how we implement processes for product approval and product development, our activities in life science companies in the Nordics. The audience for this kind of session is both existing users of ENOVIA as well as companies completely new to PLM or completely new to ENOVIA. So main objective today is for you to understand how is PLM typically applied within medical device development. So I hope it will be a good introduction, and of course I doubt we'll answer all potential questions, but we will at the end also give you a clear idea of how to learn more and how to proceed and take a next step and introduce PLM in a wider set. Okay. So I'd like to start with a solution introduction, explain what PLM might be in medical devices. Then I'd want to give you an idea of where do we start and why, and what are typical steps to get started for a new organization or for an existing organization. Common topic is to understand the regulatory fit. So we'll touch upon the topic on how does ENOVIA PLM meet FDA requirements, say 820 requirements, or the ISO 13485 requirements for the European to meet the Medical Device Directive in Europe. Then we will highlight the benefits, why have organizations chosen to go this way, and at the end we'll see how can we learn more and how can we get started. So I hope it's a useful session. Let's proceed. So, typical medical device development organization. It's typically cross-functional, different domains, and it typically follows some form of a development process, a more structured one, typically a stage gate process. Different domains have different areas and different tasks, and compared to other industries, it's often quite early with quite modest size of an organization. It requires quite some specialization of different groups and different systems and tools. But to explain the essence of PLM in this setting and for medical device development, I'll break out program management to understand where we are and where we're heading and what kind of challenges we have. Of course, program management is the coordination of development projects, making priorities, making sure they progress towards given targets within a decent budget. But it also, typically for medical devices, it covers some essential topics. And one is, of course, to translate all design inputs into different aspects of product specifications. This must be done accurately, as misinterpretations might cause errors to trickle down through the entire development project. So that's a key task and an essence. Additionally, as program managers, we need to plan out the worldwide regulatory strategy. Typically, medical devices are often sold into many geographical regions or markets, and each of them will have their own regulation. So the development team must develop a plan to comply with all regulatory requirements. And that's true for both, of course, product requirements, say machine safety or EMC requirements, as well as the strict medical device directives worldwide. as well as process requirements. Have we implemented the appropriate process in order to be licensed to develop medical devices? But planning isn't quite enough. The organization must also develop a means to demonstrate compliance with the various regional regulatory and industry standards they mean to fulfill. So, of course, that needs to be inside of our plan. We need to continuously identify the risks and challenges that different departments might face during different planning stages. And the list of tasks goes on and goes on. To mention a few additional ones, we need to define, communicate, transfer process requirements. Typically, we need to deal with resource bottlenecks and planning out the resource needs. We need to sort out an approved vendor list, and additionally an approved manufacturer list, which might not be a manufacturer which is our direct manufacturer, but supporting us through a multi-source strategy, so sourcing us through a vendor. So these are some of the challenges. If we look at PLM, it's typically introduced because we want to keep increased pace or steady pace and introduce our products on multiple markets. We need to deal with the product complexity in the race of innovation in one way or another. Most of the organizations who have are considering implementing PLM for medical devices is typically multi-site, and they might have at least one acquisition, and it's quite common that they have a design anywhere, produce anywhere strategy. So they want to have better flexibility in where they develop and where they manufacture, and they want to create independence between these locations. But still, it's quite common that you as a program manager still faced with paper-based systems, often with siloed information systems, which might be due to the acquisition strategy, where the systems haven't really been integrated when the companies are integrated, for different reasons. This causes quite painful traceability assessments. It really hinders the audit readiness, and it will, as a program manager, it becomes very difficult to assess what's the impact of a specific change in resources, design change, to do proper change planning. So in order to deal with this, there are two ways to proceed, and essence is to innovate in a compliant manner, to continue innovation in the way you've done in the past, but make sure that you have the processes and tools in place to do all activities in a compliant manner. Whenever I work in my systems, I save a file, I save a deliverable, I change a requirement, I update a risk. This change should be automatically stored and filed in the audit trail. So instead of trying to create or confirm compliance and validate compliance as an attempt to an afterthought on innovation, we build in compliance into the medical device development process. And that's what PLM is all about. So in order to give you an idea of what it might look like, what is the functionality, what do we actually do, what do systems look like, I'll go into release of ENOVIA and show you what it might look like. So this is a fairly old version of ENOVIA. It's 2012X. This is to give you an idea of what might PLM look like out in production today. You implement a version of the system and you stay with this version for some time. This is current practice. I have typically in this setup a number of projects, so different medical device projects, or this is my complete program. I can have a good overview of what my projects are, and those are the projects where I'm involved in one way or another. If I drill down into one project, I can go into the details. So typically what I'm interested in is to understand the stage gates and have an overview of what kind of stages and gates do we have. And through this overview I can get a clearer idea of what are the stages, what are the gates, and what are the deliverables for each and every gate. And I can, if I drill down, I will have visibility on a specific deliverable. So in this case it happened to be a DMR document, product output specification, and beyond this I have all details on this specific deliverable. It might be how was it approved, how was it superseded, what revision, does it have a audit trail, what does the audit trail in detail look like. And this is, if I connect this with my standard PLM backbone, which typically consists the creation of products, the release of products, the saving of files, the saving generation of drawings, then I get an exact understanding of what deliverables have been delivered on this development product at what time. So I could also be more specific, say I'd like to see the specific deliverables, and I would like to understand in this case what are my design inputs or design outputs. So I select filter out on the design output, and I'll have a clearly defined set of outputs where I can track and see this is the exact status. So so that's one part, and that's related to the projects where we see these are our deliverables, this is what they are, this is what have been achieved at any point in time during the development of the project. I can look at a different domain and a different aspect of PLM, and that would be the requirement specification. So within ENOVIA we have a full functionality for requirements traceability. So I can connect my output, inputs, my design controls at any point in time with the relevant requirements or features or tests, so I can clearly see what has been validated at what point in time. And I can see clearly who has approved and released a specific requirement and a specific test and a specific validation. So the information typically kept would be, for example, requirements to test traceability. So in this case, I would list a number of relevant requirements. And I'll see which ones are connected with test cases, and do I have a clear validation line. In this case, we can assume that we haven't come that far in the development project, but I can also clearly see that there are defined test cases relevant for these requirements. We can also see that they haven't been validated yet, and if there would have been any notes or specific remarks. So this becomes my one version of the truth for my development project, where I can see deliverables, where I can see requirements, tests, or where I could see, for example, submissions. So if I have regulatory approvals, say a 510K or a CE marking, I can see how they are connected with my projects. Different view would be specific quality processes. So I can also have a view on active CAPAs. How are they related to my projects, to my products, deliverables, and what are their current status? How are they connected to the changes, and how are they connected to the validations? So this is the tool set I use in order to understand current status of a medical device development project. The third aspect I'd like to demonstrate would be the area of product compliance or materials compliance. So that's an area where we focus not as much on the process, but on the actual product compliance status. The functionality we're providing is, of course, to set up compliance definition. In this example here, these are the compliance definitions relevant for a different regions. So here I set up what is the regional strategy for my different regions worldwide, and what kind of regulations are relevant for different regions. So for example, if I want to sell this product on the European market, I would select the all regulations relevant for the European market. I would like to understand the details for the regulatory details for the regulations active in this market. So I'll drill down into the regulation for EU RoHS in this case. So I could, for example, review the specific details on the compliance definition. So this is, you can say we have a subscription model for regulatory frameworks for different markets, for different regions. It defines what are the rules relevant for this market. So in this case, it defines the threshold values for some substances which are controlled on this market. It also contains details on the exemptions relevant on this market. so I can have an accurate definition of compliance status in line with regulatory requirements. And I can here clearly see if there are any expiration dates for my compliance status. And I could easily have a good overview of time-wise what kind of requirements do I have for this market. This is where I define my regulatory scope for global access. Typically what I would like to do then is to work internally within my own company as well as with my supply chain and request for compliance evidence. This would be true in this case for EU ROS, but it could also be true for any declaration for 13485 or any time-limited declaration for product compliance. This tool provides the means to request for COCs or compliance certificates from supply chain. It gives me the status, so I can drive this efficiently through various channels. I can see what are my different declaration states, what has been requested, and if I drill down here, I can see, okay, for which part have I requested what information, and towards this, which manufacturer is this information requested or required. It will perhaps most importantly give me good status on the products and bill of materials I work with. So as I hinted in the beginning of this webinar, I have a status of my product on the left-hand side. Here it's connected with some details required on that product. So in this case, I've activated RoHS regulation, and therefore I'd like to view the substances and materials in my parts. These are, by the way, manufacturing equivalent parts. So for each and every supplier of a part, I have one listing of a part in this table. I can clearly see what are the manufacturers involved. There is a compliance risk connected with materials compliance, which is a combination of a materials risk and a supplier risk. And that would indicate what is my compliance risk in this setting. So on a product level, I can have a red, green, and yellow sign indicating product compliance status or materials compliance status with regards to global market access, with regards to a specific regulatory domain. I have the proper tools which I might need for efficient work with this tool. But most importantly, I have the different regulations, and I can see if I'm compliant according to specific regulation. A green arrow here indicates that I am compliant, nothing to worry about. If it's green with a small star, I'm compliant, but it's an exemption, so it's time-limited compliance. If it's red, it's non-compliant, something I need to act upon. And if it's yellow, it means I've gone out to the supply chain or internally within my own organization and requested the information, but I haven't received the reply yet. And this icon here indicates if it's out of scope. It might be that in this case, for battery, that's out of scope because I've activated RoHS. This means I want to exclude the battery directive, and of course that's excluded here. Same is true for parts, which are packaging parts. So that's how I can view and see what is my compliance status and what is, am I licensed to develop this medical device, and am I licensed for a particular market. So that gives an indication of the scope which we're dealing with PLM in medical device development. So what I mentioned was briefly the product definition. I didn't go into depth upon that part. The product definition is really the product creation and product change process. My definition of the bill of material and how I changed both this and the device master record. That's really the essence. And I could go into much more depth on that part. In the beginning of the demo, I stressed the design controls and the deliverables, which is information which in the end will end up in the design history file. That's the defined deliverables, and that's always a part of scope. Perhaps not the first introduction, because I'd say that's the product definition, but it's an easy add-on to get good control of your development projects. Third aspect was the requirement and the traceability, which I can connect at any time to my design controls. That provides both good audit trail as well as the traceability for validation. Quality assurance. There are several different modules within ENOVIA for quality processes. There is a separate process for complaints. We have support for EMDRs. There is a separate process for CAPAs and non-conformance requests. These are all connected with the PLM backbone, and that's the essence. Combining them together is done in order to have quality at the fingertips of development. So if you're a development engineer in a medical device company, at any point in time can see the quality implications and the quality status of any of your designs. It does not necessarily have to be integrated in the exact tool, but it's information which should be available at your fingertips. We have also the modules of regulatory affairs, both for the 510Ks and the CE marking registration, the technical file, where I want to automatically extract at any point in time my product from my one version of the truth, my PLM backbone, and say, this is my dossier, this is what I want to file. There are specific sessions for RoHS or materials compliance. There are specific sessions for product compliance, say EMC requirements or machine safety regulations, but it's all generated and filed through the PLM backbone. And then at the end, we saw both the product and materials compliance status, where we're working with the compliance regulations for different regions. As mentioned, as a library of rules which we subscribe on and apply on our products, which means that the system will tell us what are the regulatory changes and do I need to update any of my products to reflect those changes, so that I can plan ahead and also understand, okay, there is a coming change related to EMC standards in Russia. What kind of implications does it have? Which standards are involved and which requirements are connected to those standards? So with that, I get good understanding of the regulatory status. And of course, the obvious, to see what is my product compliance? What is my current materials compliance status? Am I licensed to cure or produce this medical device? Okay, so that's an introduction. Often the first question I receive is, fine, this makes good sense, but the question is where to start. If we look at PLM functionality, it's always a multi-layered model. And PLM as such, also the companies we work with, perhaps 25% of the organizations, the implementations we have done, are medical device or say life science companies. But they all share a common framework, a common PLM backbone. So a lot of the tools and functionalities which are used in medical device development are of course also used in automotive development or telecom development or high-tech applications. The challenges of systems engineering are perfectly true for most medical devices with some electronic contents. And these are the same challenges faced by, say, a Sony Mobile or a Nokia. So there are a lot of common parts, and there are also a lot of common parts which needs to be in place and which are in place when you introduce PLM. So when PLM is installed, it brings with it a lot of key essential functionalities. It's to start from left to right. In the basic framework, it contains a repository. So that's a database where everything is stored. It's a control repository with a Part 11 compliant change behavior. So it meets the basic requirements on uniqueness of records. It has basic routing and approval, so you can define any routing or approval process, also in line with Part 11 requirements. And that comes out of the box of the installation with perhaps modifications for your specific needs, your specific interpretation of Part 11 in your development project. Essential item 3 there, information linkages, which means I can connect a requirement with a feature, with a generic bill of material, with a configured engineering BOM, with a test and a validation test results, so that I can get that traceability I want. I get that connection from my CAPA to a change, and I can see from there what are the affected items, which parts in a BOM are affected, which other products are affected, which drawings are relevant for this design change. That's the kind of linkages I want and need. There is a security model which fits with the medical device development or, say, life science development. It fits with a setup with external CROs or CMOs in the same development setup. It fits with global companies which needs to control export restrictions in a global setting. And these are the essential security mechanisms. It provides tools for search navigation, so I can at any point in time search for a compliance status, search for a compliance result. It provides tools for collaboration, so I can share my concern on a specific part or a specific drawing or a specific test record. And I can send that internally and discuss it internally with my colleagues within my own organization. Or if the security mechanism allows, I can send it externally through a click of a button or a right mouse button. So that it's easy to discuss design changes or concerns and issues. And this provides the basic infrastructure so that I can share files globally. It scales well with the number of people in the organization. We have small implementations with just 10 users or 7 users, perhaps CAD focused. And we have large implementations, perhaps 16,000 users or 75,000 users in one organization. So it has to be quite a scalable infrastructure. So on top of that, specifically for life science development, we add the product life cycle, which are the steps of a specific part or a specific drawing or a specific requirement, and how it's connected to the design history file. What kind of trace does it leave in the design history file? We have the laws for change or the rules for change management. What are we allowed to change? What's my if I have this role, what can I change and what I'm allowed to approve? And we have document control and document management, which is all the versioning required in order to have good traceability of my documents. On top of that, we have specifics for the product definition. These are the Cad integrations for electronic CAD or mechanical CAD, so for CATIA or SolidWorks or Pro Engineer, so that design engineer can work in their own tool, store information, and it has its relevant trace in the design history file without any advanced procedures by the design engineer. The basic BOM configurations, and of course also with that the DMR configuration, because you should always be able to switch between a bill of material, an engineering bill of material, a manufacturing BOM, and the DMR. And then the essential integrations. PLM needs to be integrated with other systems. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. So typical integrations for the design transfer is with the ERP systems. Potentially, it's for QMS. If you have your complaints in a QMS or your CAPAs in a QMS, then you want those integrated. Or it might be with your CRM, where you have your complaints and some initial screening of complaints and input from your customers. So these three parts, framework, foundation, and product definition, that's true for all implementations. On top of that, we add process automations. And this is specific processes for specific needs. Some organizations, they just establish the framework, foundation, and product definition, and then they create custom process support on top of that. Or Dassault Systems and Technia provide out-of-the-box or configurable processes on top for different purposes. You saw some example of those previously in my demonstration. I touched upon the one for materials compliance. I touched upon the one for design or say program and project management and deliverables. I touched upon the international submissions, the 510Ks and the CE mark. But that's just to name a few. And as you can see, there are additional ones. The business value it comes with the level of automation. But it all assumes that we have established the foundation first and that we can easily build our automated processes on top of those. So we need to start from the bottom with the framework, foundation, product definition. If we do that quickly, which it can be done, it's a matter of days, depending on how mature it is and what's required. That would be a fairly limited implementation of, say, product compliance or materials compliance, just using out-of-the-box configurations. Or it might be a full customization fit for specific processes for a generics pharmaceutical company. And it might be then a 2-year implementation of, say, a number of 50, 60 different marketing approval processes or category aspects of those. So where to start? Before getting started and say, yes, go ahead, let's do this, we recommend the following steps. First, you need to understand your strategic fit. Does your current strategy and current organization, are they on a strategy which can be aligned with the value of PLM? To some extent, smaller or larger, it can always be fitted, but how does it fit with your expectations? So when we discuss with the companies we work with or new companies, we always start with the strategic fit to understand where are you, where do you want to go, and why do you want to go that way. Often it's a question of maturity assessment with regards to data. So we understand in quite some detail what are the specific requirements to establish those processes. Exactly what data needs to be in place for a product compliance assessment, EMC requirements. what specific data needs to be in place in order to launch a COPPA and fit it to the DMR or DHF. Exactly what information needs to be present in the MPS system as well as the PLM system to have a proper fit, data fit. And then we need to make sure that it fits with your processes and SOPs. If you have well-defined SOPs, of course, the implementation of PLM, which is all about structured implementation of structured processes, will be much easier. Additionally, we need to understand your decision process. How do you make decisions based on those processes, really? What kind of data is essential at what time? What kind of information is important for a specific decision? What is the least common denominator for a specific decision in a specific phase or stage? So that's what we need to know. We also need to know your regulatory status and your regulatory goal. What kind of risk class are you? What's your risk category of your products? And what are your regulatory needs? From a medical device perspective, from a product compliance perspective, from a materials compliance perspective. That initial assessment will probably end with a gap analysis and a recommendation on how and if they can be fulfilled, yes or no, to determine readiness for PLM. Based on that, a scope can be defined and a roadmap. And when that is known, we often address what are the short-term wins, what do we really want to achieve, and what would be both the strategic fit, why do we do this long-term, but also, of course, what are the short-term benefits, what are the easy wins which we want to meet. Okay, but in reality, when companies come to us, it's not uncommon that we receive a question from a new organization, and they say, yes, it's nice, this is our strategy and plans, but our current concern is this 483. Or we actually received a warning letter and recall, and that's where we would like to start. Then the discussion is rather focused on the regulatory fit for FDA and MDD requirements. So PLM has been pointed out as the ideal solution to meet some of the most essential key issues, 483 citations, reported by FDA. Still today, we know that design controls is at the top of the concerns of FDA with their observations. And if we look at the three most common concerns, it's related to CAPA's complaints and design controls. And that's really the domain where we're present with PLM. So that's the essence. If we drill down into what does this mean, we have mapped all the requirements in the FDA QSR as well as according to 13485, and mapped the functionality of PLM to the different regulatory requirements. So if there is a paragraph and a subset, we map those to the functionality to explain how do we actually build in the regulatory requirements into the processes. And of course, especially for design controls, is all about making this mapping and making sure that we've achieved the core data and the core maturity and that we've introduced the proper functionality to meet these regulatory requirements. So all through the requirements, we can detail them. Just to give some examples, so if we look at the subclause 4.4 in ISO requirements, which corresponds to the FDA 21 CFR 82030, or section 735 in the ISO regulation. It states, item C, each manufacturer shall establish and maintain procedures to ensure that the design requirements relating to the device are appropriate and address the intended use of the device, including the needs of the user and patient. A similar statement in the ISO regulation, and if we look in the system, now this is actually a screen dump from a younger release on the one you saw, but we have the requirements. We have the parent specification. We know what's the source of information, what's a specification. We know what product it's related to, and it's connected to a use case, a test case, and to specifications. So we really link the requirement to specifications, to risks, to products, prototypes, and associated tests. And that's something we always have with us in the PLM portfolio. If we look at design input and output, just a similar statement. So the procedure shall include a mechanism for addressing incomplete, ambiguous, or conflicting requirements. So this is the action we have on any requirement that we could either approve, reject, abstain. And if it's incomplete, we need to detail it. And we do have, it's required that we add a comment and we proceed with this requirement until we are satisfied and meet our design controls. This way it proceeds. We can have a view at our different stages and our different milestones, and at each and every milestone we have a specific gate. We can follow and see what are the completeness of the DHF, what's the approval process, who was involved in reviewing and approving, and who signed this. And that's what we have with us. So what's the benefit with this? Asking some of the organizations who introduced this. And it's often a question of being a key enabler of the ability to manage and integrate change in a rapidly evolving company. That's stated by Beckman-Coulter. The team at Orion Pharma, pharmaceutical company in Helsinki, for them, PLM is all about managing complexity of their business, generics, pharmaceuticals, and they have an increased speed over a development process which spans both internally within Orion, but of course worldwide with CROs and CMOs, perhaps based in India. J&J, a large implementation of ENOVIA, their statement, our business and world is changing and we have to keep pace. PLM is the main tool allowing us to manage that change. So it's all about handling change, handling regulatory complexity, bridging innovation and compliance. The different ways to handle this then. If I would deal with this the way we do in standard project management, I would define stage gate and I would define the deliverables. Deliverables would typically be the bill of material. That's our representation of the product, but it could be any representation on that product, embalm, etc. It would be a number of documents, which would be the SOPs, it would be regulatory files, training documents, training records, etc. And it would be industrial processes. So are they defined? Are they set up? Or equipment which is required for my industrial processes. So that's what I want to deal with. If I just set it up in an isolated stage gate process, the issue I have is that's driven typically from the product management team, not in the daily work out in the different groups in the product development organization. Neither are my deliverables immediately associated to my different stage gates and decisions. One way to try to deal with this is to introduce change control, and that's typically done document-based, so through a document management solution. And that's typically owned by the QA department or driven from the QA department, which is one step in the right direction, but is often just driven from the QA department and not part of the daily work of everyone else in the development organization. Neither does it necessarily connect to the deliverables when they are created, which means that it's difficult for someone working with delivering a deliverable saying that this is where we are today. So there might be a disconnect between project management, change control, and the different deliverables. Especially if we're trying to deal with and handle best-of-breed solutions for each and every task. We might use Planisware and Microsoft Project to plan our projects. We might use a specific dedicated document solution for our documents. But we deliver our deliverables in an ERP system or a CAD system, an MCAD system. And as long as I don't have them in the same tool, I need some kind of transfer and some kind of navigation between the different tools. This is what we're overcoming with PLM. We're adding everything in the same tool, which means I get my resources, milestones, dependencies defined. They are connected with automatic deliverables, and they are treated with a scalable model as I grow, purchase new organizations, acquire new organizations, and merge them with our organization. And we connect them with whatever is required for the DMR and DHF, our full control of our medical device development project. Example of value realized then. These are some of the examples, and some items I want to point out. 33% reduction in cost of compliance. And that is not an extreme turnout. It was a planned action with the PLM implementation. At the bottom, 50 to 70% acceleration in product development speed. These are also good examples, perhaps in a smaller organization. So how could someone learn more, or how do you get started? If it is a well-defined organization, perhaps a limited organization, we have, say, 40 people, key stakeholders or users in the organization. So say a small medical device company with well-defined SOPs, procedures. Implementation of COPPA complaints connected to change, DMR, DHF, can take 3 months of an implementation. If it's an enterprise global implementation with low maturity, it might take 24 months. So it all depends on your maturity and how well defined your processes and decision processes are. An investment is somewhere in between 40,000 euro up to 7.5 million euro. And that, of course, depends on how many users you are and how complex your implementation is. Keep implementation time short. That's always our advice. So reduce the scope to the minimum deliverable. And do it together with an experienced partner and an experienced network. To conclude, and before I leave you for this session, because I hope that you've got an introduction to PLM for medical device development. I hope that you would like to know more. Different opportunities. Everyone who registered to this event will receive a link to an ebook called Program Management for Medical Devices, which is a good summary, an extension of the message I've provided here today. I also invite you all to our next upcoming Life Science Customer Advisory Board, which is held at GE Healthcare in Uppsala in Sweden on October 9th. Existing ENOVIA users in the life science domain meet and discuss current applications, challenges, and developments. So your both prospects and existing ENOVIA users are very welcome to this event. You will also, if you're an existing ENOVIA user, you will definitely get an invite. If you'd like to get invited, please let me know, and I make sure that you get an invitation. We couldn't get everything fitted into this session, so we will run a webinar series this autumn with a specific session for each and every key domain. We'll start off with an update of the latest release for License to Cure for medical devices just after the summer holidays. After that, since there is a recast on 13.485 and there are new FDA requirements relevant, we will have an update also immediately after the summer. Then we'll have separate webinar on each and every key area which we'd like to cover in this domain. So if you'd like to know more, there's definitely more to know. And we are more than happy to make you aware of different areas, aspects, both for existing users of PLM and ENOVIA, as well as for new organizations. Since you're registered to this webinar, you'll get an invite for the upcoming webinar series. If you find it interesting, please enroll and you will then get more information. With that, I'm closing this session. I doubt there will be much room for questions though, but all questions which you have logged will be saved and stored and responded to within the next 24 hours. So I'll come back to you with response on all questions. Thank you very much for attending, and wish you good success with continued product development. Thank you very much for now. Bye-bye.